We are officially starting my IG Live. The actor overcomes fear. Of course, it's an acronym. False evidence appearing real. That's what it is. Hey, Cassandra is in the house. All right. So, folks, some of us, when we're younger anyway, and regardless of age, we may wonder why I would have such a topic, which I've never been one since the day I first started chatting with actors in May of 91. I have never held back on any conversations that I have, because every single thing that I've ever covered, every single piece of the curriculum that was built at the Actors Network over nearly 24 years, basically evolved out of all of the shit that I dealt with as an actor, and a lot of which I still deal with today. Hey, Will, because a lot of this stuff doesn't ever go away, regardless of the amount of credits you have, regardless of how long you've been in the business. Certainly, the acronym FEAR and the word fear does not apply to me as much. Hey, Don, happy Monday. As much as it used to. And that's one of the reasons why I referenced my man Smitty, Bill Smitrovich, who also has a much longer resume than I do. However, it is a reality in our profession, okay? And you'll notice that I'm doing fear right after I did rejection. And always note, the order in which I do things is not an accident. I do it on purpose. And so what I'm going to put out to you right now, while you're listening, and if you got to run over and jot it down because you're doing something else, run over and jot it down. But here's the question I want to ask all of us before I get too far into this, which is this. What are we afraid of? Now, that's actually a question I would ask you in acting class in terms of a character, because most of our lives as a human being, are driven by either a want, a need, or a fear. That's just a given as a human being. Fear runs a lot of people's lives, and it doesn't have to be a dirty word. This is part of the problem with how certain things over our lifetime or culturally are drilled into us. Fear does not have to be a dirty word. It can also be simply a word that actually gives you the opportunity to grow, to learn, to evolve, and more notably, to create intelligent solutions. Not even the word defenses, because I happen to believe that, again, this is one of the reasons why we talk about child actors being so wonderfully kind of natural, whatever. Yeah, because they haven't been to high school yet. And in high school is where we actually create, and or a lot of our insecurities, etc., are, it can also be false emotions. It's I use it as false evidence, but certainly false emotions as well, Don, for sure. But high school is where a lot of our defense mechanisms, insecurities, etc., are created, and or even junior high school when we go through puberty. Adolescence is difficult. We all know this because we're all past it. But the word fear, when it comes to your acting career, has to be one of those things that I'm going to recommend if you've never really addressed not the external realities of fear as it pertains to being in this business, but for Kevin, pursuing this business. Not the art and craft of acting, the pursuit of this profession. Ask yourself right now, jot it down if you have to, what is the basis for that fear? That's my question to you. And again, I'm going to save 5 minutes at the end, you guys. If you come up with a couple of questions, I'm happy to cover them. What is the basis for your fear? Now, most of us who've been actors actually have probably, done or performed Death of a Salesman, and Willie Loman's character talking about being likable. But I personally believe that as much as we like to try and say it's always about the work, and this is one of the reasons why I believe that I made the business and the pursuit of the business such a niche of mine, is because as much as we want to say it's always just about the work, and I get it, I do get it, the truth of the matter is Unless you're born into an extremely successful entertainment family. Funny. Nepotism might be a conversation that's right around the corner. But unless you are, then having a degree of natural fear in this profession is really normal. So my number one thing I want to start out with is don't shun it. Don't try to pretend it doesn't exist. That is not going to help y'all. Okay? It certainly didn't help me. Okay? It does not help. Don't shun it. Own it, embrace it. Let's break it down and identify it. I personally believe that there are two main reasons why. The third I'm not going to count in this conversation, because the third is, am I good enough? Set that aside. That's about your craft and your work, and that's a different conversation. Okay? The two that I'm going to talk about psychologically, mentally, philosophically, that are not about the craft, is the fact that all of us know if you take a totem pole, look, I got a pencil. See, there's lots of reasons why I hold a pencil, you guys. If you take a totem pole and the very, very tip top of the eraser is Steven Spielberg or Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise, and the very, very, very bottom half of the lead are non-celebrity actors of any level. We understand the very bottom of the lead, okay? But if we look at this, this is a totem pole. That's what it is. And we all know inherently, what's up, Mel? Eminem's in the house. We all know inherently that actors, by definition, are at the bottom of the professional entertainment actor performer industry. We're at the bottom of the totem pole. What we commonly sometimes forget is the set of people that are just right above us, let's say the top of the lead of a pencil, is actually casting, because they're also hired by the same people that we're hired by. But the bottom line is we know that. So we know what we don't have that we may have in other parts of our lives, especially the power of, in certain ways, dating and the power of saying yes or no as a lady, and I mean that respectfully. The reality is we don't have much power. We don't have much leverage. And I believe that is the number one source. Sometimes consciously, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes in the foreground, sometimes in the background, but it's kind of always idling there for us. Is that we know we're at the bottom of the totem pole. And here's number two. And again, you in these conversations, guys, you don't have to agree with me. I put out stuff for you to ponder, chew on, absorb, take in, work from, and see how it fits in you. But I've been doing this for a long time. I've consulted thousands of actors, and these are the two things that commonly would come up. Not related to somebody who is not necessarily completely confident or secure in the quality of their work. That's a different subject, okay? That's why show business, okay? We're talking about the philosophy, psychology of the business. The second one is the sheer subjectivity of this profession. And I couldn't agree more. The number one challenge for me, I don't care about starting at the bottom. That's, without, other than saying, yes, I'm very, very, very fortunate in my lifetime to have been born a Caucasian male in America, yes, and relatively healthy. I still started in lots of ways at the very bottom. I came to Los Angeles. I didn't know anybody. I don't have any angles or connections or whatever. The bottom of the totem pole doesn't bother me. The subjectivity part is what has been so very difficult. What's up, PV? I got Smitrovich and Paul Ventura in the house on the same day. Holy shit balls. Y'all, just so you know, between Paul and Bill, you got about 85 years of industry expertise in this live. That's awesome. Good to see you, man. So understand, guys, the subjectivity part for me is what I actually believe drives most false evidence appearing real fear for actors in pursuing the business. Because we all got through high school. A lot of us have gone through our 20s. We know what it is like in terms of a popularity contest to either be liked and or disliked, to be on the inside or to be on the outside. And all of us, until you're at a certain level, and even then it's dicey, are on the outside of the cool kids. That's just a hashtag metaphor. And the reality is, the subjectivity of this profession is, and I'm going to give you a quote, this is not a joke, this is an actual true story in my career. And this happened early on into me being in Los Angeles, and this is one of the things that taught me a lot of where I come from. And I'm only going to say it like this. Early on into my time in Los Angeles, there was a huge writer strike in 1988, for those of us that are old enough to remember. Smitty and Paul remember that. During that period of time, I became acquainted with, and we're going to leave it at that, a casting person in television who was casting literally 3 top 10 shows. We'll leave it at that. And I remember having a conversation with this person one day. This is back, of course, before digital technology, when we had 3-ring binders and pictures and resumes and shit. And she was going through this book in terms of having a casting session. And she flipped a page to somebody that I knew, and I knew him partly because of her, but also partly just because of doing some theater in Los Angeles. And I remember saying, because I know I was right for this, we were similar types. I remember saying, well, he's right for this, and this is not a joke. This is the entire point of F.E.A.R. right here. And I was sitting there for it. She said, yeah, he is, but he reminds me of the guys who made fun of me in high school. Mic drop. True story. Not calling him in because he reminded her of guys that made fun of her in high school. Hello. Okay, but y'all, this should not be new news to any of us. And this is one of the reasons why. The subjectivity of this profession, somebody's mood, someone else's childhood, someone else's upbringing, how someone else sees the world. If you spend your time as an actor efficiently and intelligently studying, becoming proficient at this, which I have done, built an entire career, you cannot control that shit, whether I have 1 credit or have the 70 plus I have now. It makes you cannot, you've never been able to control it, and you never will. You cannot alter the fact in a profession like this, that when you don't have, what up, Merrick? When you don't have actually any credits or necessarily a certain degree of leverage, you can't do anything about being at the bottom of the totem pole in a business. And you certainly can't do anything about what somebody else may or may not think of you. I said it last IG Live, I'm going to say it again. A lot of times people think I somehow don't care or don't address being really good. No, guys, I wouldn't have the resume I have if I had not learned how to act, especially in the room at the moment. So to me, being good's a given. That's why I don't discuss it a lot. But, to Steve Martin's point, be so good they can't ignore you. There's a lot of validity in that. But in the meantime, we have a lot of time to think. We have a lot of downtime. Even if you audition a lot, you still have a lot of downtime. Because auditioning is one thing, booking a job's another. So we have a lot of time to ponder our fate, to ponder, what are they thinking about me? Oh my God, it's lions and tigers and bears. Oh my, it's like a scene from Wizard of Oz. This is what we do to ourselves because we're left with an idle mind with regards to the subjectivity of others. Paul was in casting for years. He was one of the top. Paul, I would probably say fair to say you were one of the top 3 commercial casting directors in the late 80s when my ass moved here? I think that's fair to say. 100%. I mean, I still remember the egg company at Lancashire, which is now just a freeway on-ramp. So understand, guys, that this is our general concern. And a lot of it gets added on to by the metaphorical little black book. There's a gal years ago, I'm not going to try and reference her name, who wrote a book that says, I don't know if it was you'll never work in this town again or you'll never have lunch in this town again. Whatever it may be, that's a common phrase. You'll never work in this town again, blah, 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 blah. And I get it. And that's what a lot of us function from. We function from an unhealthy place that everybody out there, when one person, you have one bad audition or you have one bad meeting or you make a mistake, and I made many of them, that you'll never work in this town again. I encourage every single person who's here today and anyone who may watch this, please, 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 go find a way to watch one of the greatest small films of all time called The Big Picture with Kevin Bacon and Martin Short. And when you watch that movie, which by the way still holds water today in Hollywood philosophically, which is why it's so brilliant, but there's an element there that you'll see in that movie. Yeah, exactly. See, again, Paul, you guys got to understand how long Bill Smitrovich, myself, and Paul Ventura have been in this business. You'll find anybody. You'll find a writer, director, producer. Somebody has dismissed or not given an actor a chance at a job interview, which is all an audition is, because, they remind them of the person who kicked their dog once. I mean, this is just, it's human nature. You can't do shit about it. Don't try to do shit about it. You cannot control it. Be healthy. You have to be healthier about just letting it go. It's not even that you can't please everybody all the time. It's not even that. Skip that bullshit. You just can't. I actually know people who think Tom Hanks is a horrible actor. But that's their opinion. That's cool. That's fine. No one can do anything about that. I assure you, Tom Hanks doesn't give a shit. So what I'm saying is the little black book metaphor resonates with us. And it can. You're going to make mistakes. There are going to be people who don't like you. Or there's simply going to be people who, for whatever reason, just simply won't ever call you in. We all have them. Please know. A lot of times people think because of my resume and my history that I've read for every single casting director that's ever sat in a chair since 1987 or 1988, and that's not true. I haven't. And yet at the same time, there are people who love me, who call me in all the time, that I know other actors who have long resumes, and they don't call them in. That's just how this shit goes, man. You're not likely going to, there are people, like I said, there are people with Oscars that people don't like. Don't worry about it. And I know that's easier said than done, but that's why I'm having the conversation, because that fear, that false evidence appearing real, or that false emotion appearing real, is not going to harm them. The only person that's going to harm is you. And my whole thing about pursuing this profession, that is exactly what it keeps us from doing. That's exactly why I have been doing this for as long as I have, because it's not about something black and white. This isn't math and science. Actors are afraid to walk into an office, afraid to walk up to somebody and talk to them, because they're afraid they're going to screw it up. Fear of being hated for the rest of my life. Fear of ruining my chance to ever be called in by them again. Fear of saying something stupid. That's why so much of what I discuss about even the business is still subjective. That's why the philosophy and the psychology, that's why I have a playlist on my YouTube channel called Inner Cues, K-E-W, Cues, haha. Because there are specific subjects that don't have anything to do with a headshot and a resume and mailing and online portals and going to an audition and all the kind of tangible crap I talk about. That's why so much of this matters, y'all. So, yes, of course you have to, it took me about it took me 87, 88, 89. Yeah, it took me about 3.5 years, Dawn, I would say. If I look back intelligently on my life, my career, I'm going to say it took me towards the middle of 1989 to learn how to let it go. Yeah, you have to learn how to say next, right, Paul? If you actually listen to some bio stories of some people who have had an incredible career, I can't speak for all of them, and I never would try, but a high percentage of them all have a story about walking out of an audition and thinking to themselves, well, screwed that one up, and I'm never gonna, and they just move on. You do have to, and again, yes, having confidence in your talent, I agree with you, will help you do that. Yeah, exactly, Paul. Just don't say that out loud. Agreed. Yeah, that's just the self-discretion of keeping your mouth shut. I remember reading for the original MacGyver. That's how old I am. And it was at the time being cast by a couple people that I knew. And when I got called in for the session, a guy that was reading right before me was a mutual friend of all of ours. And he actually had an incredible career. He was a really good looking guy. He was better looking than me, blah, blah, blah. And he was really good friends also with the casting folks. And I remember being after him, and he came out of the room and they were all laughing, just yucking it up, good times. And I'm, of course, metaphor and truth, outside the room. I don't know what happened in there. And your natural brain does this. And this is what we naturally do with a form of fear. Oh, well, he got the job. They love him. There you go. Done. And when it was all said and done, and I had gone in and read, and it was, a couple of weeks down the road, I didn't get it, and neither did the guy. And I wound up asking the casting director, who was a legitimate friend of mine at the time, and I said, so what was all that about? He goes, we were laughing because he completely screwed the audition up. And he just discovered that he wasn't able to actually read with that casting person because they were friends. This happens sometimes. You can't wind up reading with somebody. Now, that's never happened to me. I can parse and separate. But I thought, bad for me because they're laughing, they love him, and it was the complete opposite. We, as a community, have a tendency based on fear, based on being at the bottom of the totem pole, based on how subjective this profession is and what we've learned in life, to turn every single thing into something negative against us and or a concern that we're not good enough or we're going to screw it up. And it is a real problem. Now, that does not mean sometimes that it's true. There's legitimate truth in this. In the world we live in today, there's no question that if you go in and give a bad audition, just you had a bad day, because we had a bad day. Yeah, you had a bad day. Commonly, that's why there's a chapter in my book, Will, that has to do with self-sabotage, right? And you just had a bad day. There is a high likelihood, if you're over the age of 17, or certainly over the age of 24, there's a high likelihood they'll never call you in again. That's not fear. That's an actual reality of the profession we live in today. That's true. However, a lot of the fear I discuss, false evidence, is stuff we just invent. And that is my concern. I want you to become proficient at speaking to people on the other side of the desk. I want you to become more proficient at knowing how to ask questions. These are all things that don't have anything to do with your craft, and they don't have anything to do with putting together an odd-sized mailer, as I would say. They have to do with your self-belief of integrating into this profession. Because I got news for you, man. Just because you get hired and you're on set doesn't mean you can't also wind up saying or doing something goofy and have them go, oh Lord, well, let's not have that person back. So this is one of the problems that we face. Now, I'm going to also, I can't spend 30 minutes talking about fear if, hey Mickey, hey you guys coming in late, Paul, Mickey, Will, make sure you watch this one on the grid, please, 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 from the top. It is really important. Now, I can't say this doesn't happen, so I have to address this in fear, and I have to do it very, very poignantly and purposefully here in the last 5, 6, 7 minutes. And that is this. It is highly likely, if you are someone who really, truly works in this business and pursues this business, there are simply going to be a handful of moments over the course of 5 to 10, 15, 20, 25 years. It's going to happen. You can't help it. It's just the way it is. Whether it's a momentary thing, whether it's guilt by association, as Paul's already noted, the ex-wife, as I've already noted, somebody that made fun of someone in high school that looks like them. It doesn't really matter what it may be. I have my handful. But I'm pretty proud to say, after all the time I've been in Los Angeles, it's less than 5. Let's just put it like that. I have less than 5 people in this business who are still active today who wouldn't see me if I was the last white guy on the planet over 40 years old. You'd have to pay them to see me. There's no question, Mel. That's it. I've said it for years. Again, I say I can just say it right now. My resume only gives me a chance to be called in, but at the same time, because I'm not a name enough to be one or two on the call sheet, there's a lot of it that is still detrimental. So time is part of an enemy for an actor, that is for sure, even when you have one. But back to my point real quick. This is going to happen. It has happened to me. I cannot honestly say, and I'm a very open person about shit, I can't say it was my fault. But sometimes collateral damage, guilt by association, shit just happens. I will give you one anecdotal story, and it's because it's silly, in that I, again, was friendly with a casting person who was friendly with another casting person from a huge location, way back in the day, way back. And we all went out one night with a couple other people, and this other person who I was just getting to know and could have been responsible for calling me in for 5 or 6, 7 different shows at the time, she got really drunk and she threw up in the car. And because out of the entire group that I was around, remember, nepotism is coming as a conversation. Because I was the only actor around, I found out later, she was so embarrassed, she didn't ever want to see me again. I'm sorry, what? So because I happened to be in the car, not anything I did, I happened to be there when she got drunk and sick, I was no longer available in her mind to be called in for a job interview. Full stop. There you go. Hollywood, welcome. So you can spend your time making up stuff to be fearful about, and you can sometimes just but this is my point. If you know a bridge is broken and or burned, regardless of how or why, be careful about trying to repair it, and sometimes you just have to torch it in your head and let it go completely and just accept it. And I had to do that with 4 or 5, and some of these people are still in this business. All this stuff happened to me playing softball, playing volleyball. I was very active within a lot of casting community very early on, 87, 88, 89, and I got torched. That's why I'm having this conversation with you guys, because it happens. But at the same time, being afraid of that happening before it ever occurs is what too often keeps us in our house. And I'm not talking about the pandemic. I'm refuse to have these conversations that are recorded and are going to be available on my channel in perpetuity. I'm not going to cover the fact we've been shut-ins for 2+ years. I'm not doing it. You still encounter people now out in a Starbucks line or out at a party. It's going to happen. You cannot be afraid of it. What you have to do is just get proficient at having conversations and get proficient at handling yourself. That's what you have to get proficient at. And you have to understand the following. I know you know it. This is not new news. But the combination of persistence and talent over the course of time, if you're proactive and keep going, in some way wins. I don't know if I'd have 1 credit on my resume if I hadn't been persistent. But at the same time, was also working to always get better. I don't know. And then even with that said, so just make sure you understand, persistence and talent will win over time. And in the meantime, you guys, be careful about false evidence appearing real. You gotta work on it, you gotta stay focused on it, because it will be there forever, okay? It's gonna be there forever. Trust me on the sunscreen. You guys have an awesome Monday. I'm now right at 30 minutes. This is where I got to go. We will see you guys on Wednesday. Have an awesome time, and I hope this was helpful. Please, for those of you who came in late, make sure you go back and watch the whole thing on the grid. All right, guys. Perfect. Pencil in ear. See you soon.